My name is Hoey and I'm the current Deputy President of the Union of Students in Ireland with responsibility for equality and citizenship. So this means I would have run some of our large-scale events such as Pink Training, the Mature Students Convention and our Women in Leadership event. And I would have coordinated some of our big campaigns such as the Make Raw the Law campaign last year and our Ask Consent campaign this year. So I'm here today to talk to you about the fact that I want to be the next President of USI. I think the student movement is going to be faced with a number of challenges next year. Accommodation, mental health, repealing the Eighth Amendment, higher education funding, postgraduate support, graduate opportunities, the list goes on. I'm just going to talk to you about one or two of those today. I think the number one issue for the student movement next year is going to be higher education and how it is funded. I believe that higher education is and should be a public good, and I believe it should be funded as such through the taxation system. I think anyone who wants to go to higher level education should be able to do so and should be freely to do so. I think it's really important that we unite as a student movement next year towards that common goal and that we really work towards that. I think public opinion is on our side around how higher education should be funded. I think a lot of opinion is against straddling students and young people with a lifetime worth of debt. I think it's really important that we as a student movement manage to convince those in power who are going to be deciding how higher education should be funded, and that's going to be my number one priority next year. Student accommodation, there's no question about it, there is a crisis in student accommodation. I think it's the responsibility of USI to engage with both short-term and long-term solutions to this. The short-term solution is of course homes.usi.ie, which is a website that we have which allows people put up their rooms on it, which they can rent out through the tax relief scheme to students. And then sort of engaging with the long-term solutions. I have a seat on the interdepartmental working group on student accommodation, and I want to make sure that I use that seat to be a voice for students, to make sure that students get the best deal. I don't think sway should be given solely to private investors who maybe won't guarantee the best deal for students, and I want to make sure that I'm able to vocalise that in those meetings. Repealing the Eighth Amendment. When we were doing our Make a Smart Vote roadshow, repealing the Eighth Amendment just kept coming up as a priority for students. I'm a pro-choice candidate and I work for a pro-choice union, and I'm going to make it a really big part of my work next year that the student movement is mobilised, informed and ready for a referendum when it is called. I think we have a shared ethos, and I think that education is something that is so very incredibly important. I don't think anyone should be locked out of education or live during their time in education with the fear that they're not going to have a job at the end of it, or that they're not going to get through education because there isn't enough supports for mental health. They're afraid they might be kicked out of their house due to a rogue landlord, or that they're just not going to be able to get through the next day of college. I want to make sure that I, as the president of USI, and that the team around me are really, really well qualified to take care of students' needs and to fight on your behalf. So I'm asking you to vote for me to be the next president of USI, Hoey. Thank you so much. I'm running for the position of USI President because I know I'm the best person to lead the student movement next year. I understand the challenges that we're going to face ahead. I know that we need a voice who's going to be vocal about why education should be publicly funded. I'm going to stand very loudly and proudly as a pro-choice candidate and call for a referendum to repeal the Eighth Amendment. And I want to stand and defend the students' corner when discussions around accommodation come up to ensure that sway isn't given to those who won't put the best deal out for students. I want to work for the betterment of students' lives. I want to work for an equitable education system, and I want to work with you to defend students' rights. I don't believe that any student should be left behind because of poor financial situation, lack of access to mental health services, unfair treatment, or no prospect of employment when they finish college. I'm running for the position of USI because I really passionately believe in the student movement, the power of the student movement, and I really do believe that together, when we work together, we can make a better space for students all over the country. If elected President of the Union of Students in Ireland, there are going to be a number of priorities that I'll have. Repealing the Eighth Amendment, mental health, student accommodation, graduate employability, postgraduate supports, the list goes on. But I think the number one priority for both myself and the student movement is going to be how education is funded and the quality of the education that we get. I think we can all agree that the current system is no longer working. Both students, families and the system alike are pushed to the brink. I personally believe that education is a public good. I think it should be treated as such. And I think it should be funded through the taxation system, and I think it should be accessible to anyone who wants to continue with education. I think public opinion is actually on our side in this. It's about convincing the people in power who are going to be deciding how education is going to be funded over the next couple of years. And I want to make that a priority of mine. I think the student movement has withheld its capital a little bit over the last couple of years. We're focusing on marriage equality and other issues. And I think now we're going to have to focus on how higher education is funded and demanding that it should be a public good and that we should have access to it. We're going to have a number of challenges next year and the same sort of challenges that we have every year. But I think one of the major challenges is going to be keeping the student movement united towards a common goal. We united and came together during marriage equality, and we really saw the tangible benefit of what happened when we came together for the common good. And I think what I really want to see next year, and I think it will be a challenge but it's not impossible, is to unite the student movement again towards our common goal, which is accessible and publicly funded education. It's not as fun or as sexy as marriage equality, but it is something that is absolutely vitally and crucially important, not only to those of us who are currently in education, but the people who are coming up behind us, brothers, sisters, nephews, nieces, who will need access to education. I think it's going to be a challenge, but I think I'm up for the challenge of uniting the student movement towards that shared goal, which is publicly funded education, quality education that is open and accessible to anyone who wants it.